Hello everyone, this is part 12 of What If Deku Was the Chainsaw Man, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Seeping into his nostrils is the scent of cider. It's an odor so ripe that Izuku's closed eyelids twitch in unison with his nose. Testing his consciousness just as much as his vision, he gradually blinks back the room's light to see a plate of apple slices set beside his bed. That explains the smell. Izuku tilts his chin up so that his gaze moves onward, his sight settling on Jiru, who's cutting more pieces of the fruit with a peeler. There's something tied atop her head. The boy blinks, sharpening his vision, realizing the girl grew her hair out during her internship and tied it into a top knot. That's a good look for you. Izuku surprises himself with the raspiness of his voice when he tries complimenting her appearance. Only then does it hit him how dry the interior of his mouth is, lips chapped, and throat parched. Those apple slices are starting to look as appealing as they smell. Gah! Jiru jumps in her seat with a startled shout. Seems she's shocked by the hoarseness of his speech too. She blushes, embarrassed, her ear jacks raise into a threatening position. Dummy. Stop doing that, she scares him in return before lowering the ear cords with a huff. That's twice now. Izuku swallows some of his saliva to moisten his mouth as he contemplates what he'll say next. He takes in his surroundings, recognizing the familiarity of a hospital room. She's right. He's already put her through a similar shock after she came to check on him during the sports festival. Sorry, he owes her an apology. Jiru sighs, shaking her head. After a moment, her blush returns and she begins avoiding eye contact, her gaze focused on the apple that she's peeling. You really like my hair. Her timid tone takes Izuku by surprise with how much of a contrast it is to her earlier yelling. He smiles, nodding. It's cute. His compliment makes her blush turn from a light hue to a darker shade of red. He finds his face heating up too, as well as his body matching her fidgeting demeanor. Jiru brushes a jack behind her ear like it's a stray strand of hair. I got the idea from Momo. Izuku's blank look makes her add clarification, Yaoyorozu, and Izuku winds up raising his eyebrows as he wonders since when the two girls found themselves on a first-name basis. Oh. He shrugs it off and nods to let her know he understands who she's referring to so that she can continue. Jiru touches the tip of her top knot as she says, but the ponytail is kinda her thing, so I only went with a small style. When the girl glances back towards Izuku, she finds him staring at her chest. She quickly becomes flustered and shouts, "That's not what I meant." I didn't say anything. Izuku holds his hands up as a sign of surrender while simultaneously using them to shield himself from the girl's potential signature earjack attack. Jiru harumphs, folding her arms over each other to cover her chest. I'll chalk it off as you being lightheaded from your blood transfusion. The girl then adds the last of the apple slices that she finished cutting to the plate. I didn't even say anything. Izuku whines as he looks anywhere but at Jiru. He finds himself staring at the IVs and blood bags hooked into his arm. Izuku inspects the connections a little before he reaches for the apples. But his fingers brush at air. Jiru pulls the plate away from his grasp. He looks up at her inquisitively. They're saying you went after the hero killer. Jiru returns his gaze with a glare. Izuku retracts his hand from the plate while wincing. He leans back, resting against the pillows propped behind him with his eyes closed. That was actually Ida. I was just trying to back him up. He feels the need to clarify things but internally apologizes to his friend for throwing him under the bus like that so easily. One eye peeling back open to catch a glimpse of Jiru's angry expression is enough to make him lose those regrets soon after though. You fought the hero killer all by yourself. Jiru's face softens when she glances at all of the hospital equipment connected to the boy. You could have died. Yeah. Izuku subconsciously rubs his neck when recalling the beheading that he received from Stain. He'd had plenty of close calls during his battle with the hero killer and only came out unscathed thanks to his healing factor. Thanks to Pokita. He moves his hand down to hold the string that had been his dog's tail, giving it a squeeze, but it all turned out alright in the end, didn't it? Jiru cranes her neck back, startled as though she's seeing something strange. Maybe she only heard a weird thing. Regardless, she can only sigh like always when dealing with the boy. It's no use. You're alive, at the very least. She pushes the apples back over. Izuku happily snatches a piece of the fruit from the plate before shoving it into his mouth. Its juicy flavor makes him hum with pleasure. He winds up greedily grabbing more and more until there's nothing left. He has his mouth full, still chewing, when he hears Jiro clear her throat. Izuku looks up at her. She meets his eyes and leans forward in her chair. But you're still in trouble, ya no. Izuku swallows. I'll make it up to ya somehow. He sucks each of his fingers to lick any remaining residue that may be left over from the apple. Not just with me, Jiro huffs while restraining herself from jabbing the boy with her ear jacks. She raises her own hand to begin counting off her fingers. Aizawa-sensei, Izuku grimaces. Principal Nezu, that one's no better. Even Hawks and some lady are talking about you facing consequences. The last one makes him groan and lay back down. He stares at the ceiling for a while, not thinking much of anything but taking it all in at the same time. After a while, he dares to speak up again, though his voice is now merely but a whisper as he asks, I messed up that badly, huh? Jiro leans back in her chair, staring off into space with him. Whatever plentitude of nothingness he sees is the same thing she does. Understatement of the semester, Midoriya. Izuku turns his head, averting his gaze so that it lands on Jiro again. She's not noticed his staring yet. He opens his mouth, trying to formulate the right words. I've been thinking. Jiro smirks, glancing back at him for a moment to respond, I'm impressed. Izuku rolls his eyes, unable to help but smile too. Thank you, it's the first time I've ever done that. He has to admit he hasn't made the wisest of decisions lately anyways. Jiro giggles. Once she's through laughing, she asks, what have you been thinking about? Izuku looks away, blushing. He might be able to admit to being a dumbass, but he doesn't know if he can say this. After all we've been through, why don't we call each other by our first names? His stutter isn't so bad that Jiro hears him on the first try. She fixes her posture, shocked straight. I mean you and Yaoyorozu are okay with it. Izuku slouches with his demeanor and his blush goes deeper. Yeah, but she's a girl and you're a boy, and, Jiro sputters and sweats but manages to compose herself. Alright, fine, the two swap mannerisms and she squeaks out, just don't do it too much. Izuku stares, eyes wide. His mouth hangs slack-jawed until he closes it shut to make a smile. Okay, Kyoka, he tests her name on his tongue. And gets jabbed in the throat by her ear jacks, making him choke on the name. I said don't do it too much, Kyoka shouts while hiding her face to conceal her embarrassment. Izuku is too busy gasping for breath as he coughs and wheezes to see her in such a state though. Ah, young love, recovery girl coos from the corner of the room with a fond look in her eyes. That only flusters the boy and girl further, both of them caught being close and separating from one another. But you should know better by now, young lady, to let somebody know when he comes to. The nurse shows pity on him by changing the subject. Alright, Kyoka nods as she stands up in order to bow apologetically, sorry for not doing so sooner, recovery girl, but the elder heroine prods Kyoka with her cane to straighten her posture, waving it off. Just remember it for next time. The nurse passes each of the teenagers by to reach the room's door. It's not until she's sliding it open that they each share a glance with one another after registering her words. Next time, both the boy and girl gulp at the implication of having to visit the nurse's station again under any circumstances. Recovery girl steps aside so that 4 figures can enter. The first of which is about her height, the small white mammal that so happens to be the principal of UA. Followed by Aizawa and Hawks. The hero Izuku interned under gives him a small wave, but it doesn't come across as very assuring. Not when the final person to enter is the director of the HPSC, Makima. The red-haired woman meets Kyoka's eyeline in passing, golden gaze sending shivers down the young girl's spine. When Makima stops, she stops at the front of Izuku's bed. Hawks stands beside her while Nezu and Aizawa mirror them from the opposite end. Recovery girl signals for Kyoka to come with her. After looking back to share a glance with Izuku, receiving a nod of encouragement, she exits. The room's door slides shut behind her. Makima, as calm and dignified as ever, begins by saying, "It's a pleasure to see you again, Mr. Midoriya." Izuku glances between the opposing duos before shifting in his bed to better address them all. Can't say I feel the same way under these circumstances. His murmur is just loud enough to be heard over the beeping monitors. Aizawa hides his amusement by tucking his lower face into the capture cloth wrapped around his neck like a scarf. Hawks looks away to conceal his own smile. Nezu, on the other hand, doesn't bother stifling his tiny titter. It's our collective understanding what this discussion is about then. UA's principal hops up onto the chair that Kyoka had been occupying before clasping his paws together. We can skip pleasantries and get straight to the point of the matter. Izuku stares down at his hands, balling them into fists. When he looks up, his gaze is as hardened as his tone of voice. Stain. Or rather, your little tussle with Stain. Aizawa glowers in such a way that Izuku half expects his teacher to activate his quirk. The boy shrinks under the man's glare. Hawks sighs, standing off to the side. He takes one look at Izuku and can't help but show some sympathy on his face. But that's all he can do for the boy. I told you to stay put, kid. Authorizing the use of force with one's quirk, the government keeping everyone on a leash to maintain control, is a matter of complying with hero law. Makima fixes Izuku with a stern stare as she speaks, inflicting harm without explicit permission, even to face someone such as Stain, is a breach of that contract. The woman's gaze then takes a shift to glance sidelongingly at Nezu. As such, we are left to deal with you impartially in order to maintain society's quirk laws. Her mouth morphs into some semblance of a smile when UA's principal can only nod in agreement. Izuku opens and closes his mouth, overwhelmed by what he's hearing. He eventually finds it in him to speak out and defend himself. It's not like I went looking for Stain. Manual and other testaments say otherwise, that you had the gall to order they stay put while you pursue the hero killer. Aizawa interrupts with a sharp tone that makes the boy flinch. While Izuku never had a father present to fully understand, he knows that the man is disappointed in him more than justifiably angry. That's not it at all. I was looking for Ida cause Stain so happened to be there. Izuku becomes more desperate as he looks around him at all the serious stone-cold faces. Young Tenya Ida will be facing repercussions for his actions too. He gasps when he realizes he made a mistake by throwing his friend's name out in the open to take partial blame. However, this particular conversation is not about him. Nezu moves his paws behind him as Izuku slumps back onto his bed. It's about you. This is a circumstance not easily dismissed. Makima turns in the direction of Hawks so that he can join her at the forefront of the boy's bedside. Not only was your reckless abandon to challenge the hero killer a clear violation, but to make matters more solidified, you disobeyed a direct order from your instructor to undergo any sort of hero activity that night. She gestures towards Hawks as though to present him in court before a judge and jury. Izuku looks at his mentor with wobbly eyes on the brink of shedding tears. Hawks hangs his head, unable to meet the boy's gaze. Sorry, kid, I had to tell them the truth about what exactly happened and how it happened from my end. His heart pangs since he knows that means he basically betrayed the boy and he's now admitting it out loud. Izuku sniffles, drying his eyes with a wipe of his sleeve. Okay, to be fair, you did tell me to wait on the train, but Ida would have died if I had. He does his best to keep his composure while glancing in the direction of Nezu and Aizawa for support. But he finds none. Is your faith in UA really that lacking? Did you not think I would be aware of my student's internship choice and not be able to deduce why he picked someone in Hosu? I was tracking Ida and fully prepared to intervene myself. Aizawa steps forward to share more strained displeasure with his attitude, which causes Izuku to do a double take. What? Then where the hell were you? It's his turn to express some anger when looking back on his encounter with Stain while now having such knowledge. Nezu holds up a paw, signaling for the boy to settle down. Come now, Midoriya, maintain some respect for your teacher. The small mammal stresses with his tone that they not get into a shouting match. The attack led by the League of Villains was unprecedented. Aizawa takes a step back as he reflects on the night and grumbles out the rest of his answer. I was delayed in lending any assistance. I meant no disrespect. Izuku mumbles his own response while trying to bow from his position on the hospital bed. But my point still stands. If not for me, Aizawa-sensei would have been too late to do anything, though that doesn't mean he's willing to surrender his argument just yet. Hawks lets out a strong exhale before pointing out, all we know is that your interference wasn't enough to keep us from recovering the corpse of the pro-hero native, and that feels like a verbal backhand to the boy. It's hard to give a defense about the preservation of life when Ida ran away and the only other person present was killed. Hawks tries to be gentle as he says the rest, but he can tell the damage has already been done if Izuku's downcast gaze is anything to go by. Unfortunately, you provided us with no results to convince anyone otherwise. Makima moves to take Hawk's position at the head of the bed and adds, not even the hero killer's capture. Nezu hums, accepting that fact with all the others. We had originally planned on making it appear as though Endeavor fought Stain on your behalf, but there's no proof without a body to show burns as evidence. Nezu pauses as he considers the plausibility of any chances to still manufacture a fib of some kind but is unable, and all of the eyewitnesses present for the tail end of your fight saw firsthand Stain was covered in lacerations instead of burns or other potential injuries. Chainsaw lacerations, Makima specifies the glaring concern with what Nezu pointed out. Indisputable, she takes a step closer and then another step. Undeniable, she's looming over Izuku now as she says, you must take accountability this time. This time, Izuku's voice is but a timid mule as Makima's shadow casts over him. I'm afraid what transpired prior to now, while usually inexcusable, was accounted for by I and the courteous hero Public Safety Commission. Nezu leans against the back of the chair he's on as he lowers his head to convey guilt. Izuku nods to show both pity and appreciation. You had under-the-table dealings, but Aizawa isn't so willing to let his boss off the hook. He stares with disbelief at the mammal, pertaining to a student, no less. Nezu closes his eyes, bobbing his head. I'm afraid I was gambling with the devil, as they say. He reopens the black beady orbs to stare back at Aizawa when his voice cracks to admit, I just never imagined I would lose. Lose? Aizawa's eyes narrow. Even without his quirk active, the man's hair starts to stand on end. He grinds out through gritted teeth a demand for an answer more than a request. Lose. What? Rather than take Midoriya into police custody, we've reached an agreement that the commission will be taking custody and assuming full responsibility for Midoriya. Makima provides Aizawa with an explanation before the principal can. What? But that answer only raises more questions and concerns for Izuku. What does that mean? Nezu turns his gaze to the boy, dark eyes glistening in a way they seldom do to express a deep sincere somberness. I'm afraid it means, once the paperwork is finished being filed, you will no longer be a student of UA. Nezu shares with Izuku the brunt of the bad news. What? He still can't fathom the reality of what he's being told. It gets worse and worse. His dreams shattered, he allows tears to spill, unable to hold them back any longer. What about Midoriya's hero career? Aizawa grabs Nezu by the arm with a firm grip. He's still my student. He's losing his own composure with what more that gets unveiled. Not anymore. Eraserhead, Hawks chimes in with his voice raised to gain the man's attention. Once Aizawa releases Nezu and faces him, the hero elaborates with what he hopes is the silver lining in all of this. Midoriya's in my care from now on. He directs a glance towards Izuku to inspire some optimism towards him as well. We aren't getting rid of each other that easily, kid. Don't worry, I'll keep ya under my wing. He even adds an encouraging wink. Aizawa steps into the other hero's space, getting up close and personal. Do you understand what it means to watch over a child in order to ensure the growth into an adult? His voice is a low growl that threatens to defeather the bird. But Hawks keeps his cool. All too well, he recalls being a kid himself and places a hand on Aizawa's shoulder in order to assure him he'll be in good hands, though he can't help but toss a backwards glance in the direction of Makima while adding, so long as I'm around. Makima catches the look, still maintaining a smile. As an agent of the commission, Midoriya's mentorship program will allow him to fast-track gaining his hero license. The HPSC director separates Hawks from the UA representatives and instead casts their focus back to whom the entire matter revolves around. His future is more secured now than ever. Izuku finds it hard to speak, but just as difficult to swallow whatever words rest on his tongue. He resists the urge to touch his neck, feeling as though there's something restricting his throat. For some reason, he's starting to believe he's more of an animal than the mammal that runs UA. Izuku's control taken from him, he's no better a pet to the commission than Hawks being kept in a bird cage with his wings clipped. He starts to realize what this feeling is. He's been collared by Makima. Meanwhile, Tomura Shigaraki has acquired his own personal pet project. Floating in a tube sized to fit a human body, Stain sleeps within a chemical bath of gelatinous liquid. Wires feed into the hero killer akin to the medical equipment currently attached to Izuku within his hospital room, except, these connectivities serve a different purpose. Leering with a simper stretching across his scarred mouth, Shigaraki enjoys what Dr. Garaki cooks up. The mad scientist goes through the usual recycled treatment of enhancing human genetics, the DNA formula for a basic Nomu genome, gradually transforming the mortal being into a monster. As for what idiosyncrasy will be applied to the newly acquired model, that's been left up to the young master of evil. Shigaraki hadn't suggested anything original or entirely unique. Instead, he requested something ironic. Something suitable to Stain's core functionality. Protrusions from the figure's arms, instruments that the base body has ingrained skill to use, shimmer with sharpness. An equal extension is attached to the hero killer's skull. It's a mimicry of the boy with the chainsaws. It's something concocted personally for the brat. A rival to the hero hopeful. A hero killer. A villain. Garaki and Shigaraki admire their creation with sadistic glee. The Nomu should be fully operational within the next few weeks. Garaki gives his time estimation as he reads the status report output from his tablet. He half expects the young master of evil to complain about the wait. Instead, Shigaraki laughs, causing Garaki to glance up. No, not Nomu. Let's give this one a special name. Shigaraki feels something blossom in his chest that he wasn't able to feel when he was gifted Pokita as a pet. This feeling, new and unfamiliar to him, puts him in a good mood. He keeps his pinky raised as he places his hand against the testing tank. Garaki, though pleased to see the young master admiring his handiwork, feels a sense of unease. It's uncanny. Maybe Shigaraki takes after his sensei after all. Oh. His mustache bristles as he forces a smile. Shigaraki nods, grinning. I'm thinking, Katana Man. Marking her notes in curved kanji, Kyoka underlines the final few verses. Song lyrics complete, music symbols etched and highlighted to pattern every word, she dots the end of her completed work. A partial smile sneaks its way onto her face as she reads it back. It's something she'd started for him when he put himself in the nurse's office during the sports festival. She finds it amusing that she's finished it now that he's put himself into the medbay again. Kyoka closes the notebook and tucks it away for later. As embarrassing as it'll be to share, she hopes the numbskull likes what she wrote. Considering the troublesome boy a second more, the girl starts to glance around the classroom. He usually arrives a few minutes early to school, and yet, there's still no sign of him. Izuku's desk is completely vacant. Something seems off. Kyoka checks the clock mounted above the door and waits a while longer with some hopefulness that he'll walk in from the entrance. When Kaminari steps through the doorway instead, she inwardly groans. There's still some time until Aizawa-sensei arrives. She stands up, scooting her chair back, and ventures to question some of her peers. Oi! Kyoka flags down Ida with a wave. The bifocaled boy glances up, robotic movement even more stifled than it usually is. She can't blame the poor guy. After losing his brother to Stain and then coming face to face with the killer, Kyoka shakes off the feeling before asking about the other boy who'd been involved in that entire fiasco. Have you seen or heard from Izu? She freezes up with a blush threatening to appear before feigning a cough to say, Midoriya, instead. Ida balks, hesitation evident in his stiff demeanor. But the Tin Man must have some oil in his joints, since he eventually does manage to move. The boy slides his bifocals up the bridge of his nose before fixing the eyes behind their lens on Kyoka. I'm afraid I haven't. Not ever since. He trails off, voice stalling like there are engines in his throat instead of his calves. Ida clears his throat before recovering and apologizing, sorry, Jiro. Ida hasn't been the most social butterfly in their class, but he certainly has still been vocal in the past. To see the boy so closed off now, it's reminding her of the way he acted after the sports festival. He's hiding something. While Kyoka's first thought is that he and Izuku suffered some kind of punishment for what happened, the arrival of everyone in Izuku's room the last time she saw him the most glaring bit of evidence, she also takes into account that Ida is still present for class. One of the boys couldn't have suffered something more severe than the other, right. But before Kyoka can ask anything, Ashido interjects with her sudden appearance. Are you two talking about Midori and Stain? The Pinkett parks her rear on Ida's desk with a little bounce. Normally the bifocaled boy would reprimand the girl, but he apparently withdraws at the mere mention of the hero killer or his fellow classmate. It's pretty crazy what happened, isn't it? I heard he took on Stain all by himself, Ashido is blissfully ignorant to how uncomfortable her enthusiasm on the subject makes him, but Kyoka can tell that each sentence is only making it worse. Ida. You were there, right? Is it true? What happened? Ashido's shouts garner the attention of other students. Hagako's floating uniform skips over, her interest perked. Yeah. Tell us all about it. Was Stain scary? How's Midoriya? The invisible girl bombards the boy with questions of her own. Sero and Uraraka don't say anything, but it's obvious that they're listening if the curious looks are anything to go off of. Asui is unusually quiet while sharing a glance with Todoroki, who's doing his best to stare anywhere but at the other students. It's at this point that their homeroom teacher enters the room. Whether he overheard them or not, that's enough. Everybody return to their seats. Aizawa's authoritative voice warns everyone to cease conversation at once. Ida breathes a sigh of relief when his desk is cleared away. Kyoka, on the other hand, is anything but relieved. Especially when she sees the brainwashing boy from the sports festival following Aizawa into the room. Aizawa-sensei, what's that guy doing here? Kaminari raises his hand to blurt out a question despite not waiting to be called on. He's given a firm glare as a result, making the blonde boy recoil and whisper apologies, but the valid inquiry gets an answer nonetheless. Some of you may or may not recall Hitoshi Shinso's performance during the sports festival. Aizawa gestures towards the purple-haired boy who appears as though he just rolled out of bed. He spent the time that you were away during your internships training under me and has earned himself a spot in the hero course. The hovering hand prods Shinso forwards. Welcome and treat him well. Congratulations, Asui offers the new member of 1A a warm smile despite her voice croaking out a ribbit. Shinso nods towards the greenet, showing his appreciation for her sentiment. Uraraka claps her hands together, also welcoming the boy. We're happy to have you. The brunette is backed by a thumbs up from Ojiro and an enthusiastic nod from Kirishima. But when Shinso steps forward to take Izuku's desk, some of those people share Kyoka's discontentment. She stands up to vocalize her distress. That's Midoriya's seat. You can't sit there. Her earjacks rattle like a snake's tail when she feels her frustration swelling forth into her face. Heated red, her cheeks puff up with embarrassment, but she isn't so willing to sit back down and surrender over it. Jiru, Aizawa's stern stare doesn't match the tone of his voice as he addresses her outburst. That kind of behavior will not be tolerated here. He has a hard look on his face, but Kyoka can hear his crestfallen tone thanks to her quirk. That's somehow worse than being reprimanded. She feels a pang in her chest. She already knows why he must sound this way before he says it. Shinso will be taking the place of Midoriya, and as such, will be using Midoriya's desk. What? Kirishima shoots up from his seat. His chair scapes across the floor's tile before toppling over. But that's not fair, and throws his hands up to then slam them down on his desk. Yeah, Sero nods fervently. His usual broad-toothed smile is missing as he says, that's not cool. I concur. Tokiyami crosses his arms. Dark Shadow comes out to add, not cool. Bakugo's lips are parted, but nothing comes out of his gaping mouth. He looks down, contemplative. Then hardens his expression, trying to appear indifferent. TCH, he's one of the less vocal students about their classmates' absence. But he can't fool Kyoka. She hears his heartbeat breaking rhythm. Ida's despair is desolate. He makes himself scarce from his spot. His shoulders shake and slouch, as though the burden of a weight is upon solely him. The boy blames himself. It takes everything he has to hold back tears, his glasses prematurely fogging up. Todoroki stares straight ahead, air pushing out through his nostrils. If the boy had a full fire quirk like his father, he'd have no doubt breathed like a dragon puffing fumes. If this is about what happened with Stain, I was there, and Midoriya shouldn't be at fault for trying to stop the hero killer. His facial features tighten when he tersely adds, he even saved my bastard of a father from the villain. This is not up for debate. Aizawa snaps at them to quiet down. His eyes flare red and his hair rises above his head. When everyone settles back into their seats, he deactivates his quirk with a sigh. Shinso's acceptance into the hero course has nothing to do with Midoriya's removal, and that's all you need to know. Everything else is information that I'm not at the liberty to share. His voice is strained like his patience, but the class seems to get the idea. I was hoping to be classmates with Midoriya. I'm just as disappointed as the rest of you, Shinso whispers more so to himself than his new peers. When he takes the seat of the boy that beat him in the sports festival, it doesn't feel very comfortable. Aizawa massages the temple of his forehead, nursing the headache that's coming on. The scar stitches are starting to act up again as well, his cheek itching as much as it stings. We'll carry on with your final exams as though nothing happened, the tired teacher groans since the day has only just started. But Kyoka is no better off as she zones out for the rest of the day from hearing that terrible news. It comes as an awful shock to her. One difficult to recover from. The girl can't help but wonder why the boy didn't let her know himself. No text, no call. She checks her phone during lunch, even trying to reach out and get in touch with him. Izuku Midoriya may as well have blinked out from existence the way that he's ghosted her. Momo comes over to comfort her when the final bell rings. Bosom pressed against her face like a soft pillow, Kyoka sinks into the hug. I just don't understand, she mumbles into the other girls' like one of them will know all the answers. Ida approaches the two, adjusting his glasses. Perhaps I can help with that. He sounds just as subdued, but his voice still manages to grab a hold of Kyoka's attention. I think I owe you that much. An explanation. Momo speaks for her friend when she nods to urge the boy on. Yes. Please. Ida bows at the waist, a perfect bend. It's all my fault. He starts with an apologetic cry now that the emotions he withheld throughout the day have bubbled to the surface. Midoriya suffered vigilante charges in place of my own actions because I ran away. The legs he used to flee from the fight wobble as they threaten to give out. It's to my knowledge that I'm only allowed to remain here because of his sacrifice. It should have been me, not him. Ida. That can't be true. Uraraka comes to console her friend when she sees his back racked with sobs. Her hand rubs soothing circles between his shoulder blades. The other members of Class 1A surround him as well, having overheard his cries too. It is. Ida sniffles as he corrects his posture. He takes the handkerchief from his coat pocket to wipe his glasses clean before clearing his throat. The treatment of which Midoriya and I have received is reflective on the law, but I can tell you that I'm just as deserving of a harsh punishment in such a case. He suppresses a rebound of tears and keeps his composure as he looks at the class crowded around him. Asui brings a finger up to her chin, an inquisitive gesture. What was your punishment then? She asks with a curious tilt of her head. Remedial courses and additional summer camp. Kaminari and Ashido wince while the rest of the class are smart enough to know that's not exactly a punishment in Ida's case, though I've been informed that failure to meet expectational standards will result in my provisional license being revoked. Why couldn't they have given Midoriya the same treatment? Todoroki doesn't hide his displeasure when a full frown overcomes his face. Ida's shoulders lift, giving a half-shrugged response. I can't accept a second chance in good confidence if they refuse to offer the same opportunity to Midoriya. He looks down as though hesitating before returning his gaze to the group and saying, and as such will be denying my redemption by withdrawing from the hero course. What? Sero gawks at the boy as though that declaration was given by a second grown head. Are you crazy? Hagakure exclaims loud enough to be noticed while flapping her arms around for extra measure. Ojiro has to grab a hold of the girl to calm her down, a bead of sweat rolling down his forehead. Yeah, come on man, don't do that. Kirishima grimaces at the thought of having to leave the hero course. But Ida shakes his head, denying their inclinations for him to stay. It's only right that I undergo the same punishment. His chin tilts down and he closes his eyes when he confides in him the deeper reasoning for his decision. Besides, the hero killer was right when saying it's unbefitting of a hero to seek revenge. I not only got native killed, nearly myself included, but I made Midoriya suffer consequences that should have been mine to endure. All due to my selfishness to seek vigilante justice. Ojiro flicks his tail back and forth, nodding along with its movement. I guess I can understand that. He reflects on the sports festival and a similar choice he had to make. Shinso shares a look with the blonde. Thank you everyone for understanding. Ida manages a small smile and even accepts some hugs from his friends like Uraraka or Asui. It's been a pleasure attending class with you all and I shall miss you deeply. His farewell isn't so stoic compared to the start of the semester. It's actually rather heartfelt. Kyoka can hear everyone's beat dropping a decibel. Even her own. Well, that was a bummer. Talk about a mood killer. Ashido deflates from exhaustion once Ida leaves. But the girl recovers promptly, gaining a second wind when she comes up with a brilliant idea. I know what'll cheer everyone up. How about a class outing? She drapes an arm each around Hagakure and Kirishima to capture at least 2 people. Oh, I dunno. Uraraka wavers with her decision. She forces a chuckle out while tapping her padded fingers together. It's not like her school uniform skirt allows for any pockets to carry a wallet. And even if she did have a purse, she's not so sure she can afford to go anywhere. Yeah, Ojiro scratches the back of his head as he glances around at the others. The timing isn't exactly the greatest, what with Ida and Midoriya leaving. That's exactly why we need to do something though. To brighten the mood, Ashido shakes Hagakure and Kirishima with her exaggerated movement while whining, "Come on. We've got to commemorate them and welcome Shinso to the class and celebrate our internships. There's so many reasons to do this." "Pass," Shinso mumbles from his spot behind the collection of classmates. He's been trying to sneak his way past them all in order to slip through the door unnoticed, but the two bunch together to pull it off. Kaminari comes out of nowhere and ropes an arm around the boy's shoulders, both of them wobbling off balance from the tackle. "But then how would we be able to get to know ya?" The blonde surges with more energy than his quirk is capable of generating as he flashes a grin and a thumbs up towards Ashido. "Count us in. This is a great bonding idea." "See." Kaminari agrees. Ashido matches the boy's gesture before gravitating towards the other people who haven't shared their opinions yet. Who else is down? Sero shares a look with Tokiyami, both boys shrugging. Sero's trademark smile returns, teeth and all. Koda, though shy, timidly nods with a raised hand to affirm he'd like to come along. Pretty soon, the odds begin to shift in favor of Ashido's suggestion. Until Bakugo brushes by them all, shouldering his backpack as he does. "No way," he grumbles in a low tone, "I'm going home." He drags his feet out the door, everyone watching his back recede. Kirishima grimaces, almost chasing after the blonde. But nobody does. Nobody even says anything about it. Until, what would we even be doing anyways? Saito shifts awkwardly while attempting to recover the vibes that Bakugo brought down. Ashido perks right back up, seizing Sato's question as an opportunity to salvage the situation. "How about karaoke?" The Pinkett suggests the first thing that comes to mind and doesn't regret it in the least. "I know a great place just a few blocks from here so that we could walk as a group." "Sounds fun." Asui ribbits her response first, which is followed by a commotional chorus of agreement from the remaining margin of 1A. Kyoka steps back, shaking her head. "I think I'm with Bakugo on this one. I'm just gonna go home." She's grateful that Momo is so much taller than her so that she can hide behind the fellow girl. "Fart." Ashido groans before chasing Kyoka to lead her by the arm. "Come on, this is right up your alley." She tugs on the girl despite getting resistance. "For real?" Kaminari chimes in from the sidelines before invading her space too. "You've got to sing at least one song." That makes Kyoka stall, brain short-circuiting as though the boy used his quirk on her. "Sing," she squeaks out a more scared than shy sound. The poor girl develops a sense of jumpiness when Momo betrays her. "I actually agree with them, Kyoka." Momo grabs her friend from behind to hold her in place. "Momo," Kyoka whimpers in a vain attempt at receiving mercy as she tilts her head back to gaze up at who she thought was her friend. But Momo doesn't release her hold, not even surrendering to puppy eyes. "I think this is just the kind of thing you need to cheer you up." She gives Kyoka's shoulders a soft squeeze to tenderly usher the girl on. "It'll be good for you." Kyoka starts to object but finds her voice cutting itself off. For some reason, her eyes are drawn to her backpack, where she keeps her composition notebook. The girl relents, fine, accepting her fate. The class cheers over their victorious peer pressure. Kyoka can't help but smile a little, happy that they convinced her. Ashido pumps her fists into the air, squealing with excitement. She single-handedly managed to convince the whole class aside from Bakugo to go. Even Todoroki somehow gets coerced into tagging along. The gang heads for Ashido's fabled karaoke club. Fortunately for them, she didn't exaggerate the distance. It's a short trip that results in a good time. Momo pays for everybody to get a song each, the class sharing a VIP booth for a private concert. With mood lighting coupled with a disco ball turning above, it's a setting that everyone can get behind, both Tokiyami and Aoyama satisfied with it. Since it was her idea, Ashido takes the microphone first. Her singing, though not the greatest, is full of confidence. More applause is due to her busting out some breakdancing moves to compensate than her voice. It's a better performance than what Kaminari follows with, at least. Kyoka can hardly stifle her laugh. The electric blonde misreads half of the lyrics and remains off-key the entire time. Everybody takes their turn, cycling through songs of their choosing. The most memorable had been Todoroki's strange pick to do, Let It Go, from Disney's Frozen, enhanced by Kirishima and Sero providing background vocals, and Momo's cover of Miki Matsubara's Stay With Me. But now it falls on Kyoka to close out their remaining time. She shrinks in her spot on the sofa, mortified when everybody begins chanting her name. All right, Kyoka gives into their peer pressure once more with a cry of defeat. She whines all the way to the stage despite Momo's encouraging gestures. Ashido whistles with Hagakure as they hype her up, making the poor girl's anxiety skyrocket. She fidgets in place as she scrolls through the song selection options. But Kyoka's eyes find themselves wandering to her backpack again, where her notebook is. Momo had said this outing might be good for her, but maybe not to forget about Izuku. Rather, if she's not so certain she'll see him anymore, this might be a good chance to sing his song for him even in his absence. The girl musters up enough courage to hold out her hand and request Momo give her the notebook. She'll be brave and sing her latest work. Class 1A shall be her test audience. Effort, her voice carries well within the room's confined space as she starts. Future, the instrumental beat picks up and the disco ball lights up the room, a beautiful star. Kyoka closes her eyes, knowing the lyrics by heart, the notebook just for reference and comfort. She tries to imagine Izuku in her head, a picture of what he's doing forming in her imagination. Laundromat's empty, must be my lucky day. The sun should be setting right about now. Izuku leaving UA, he probably packed his bags to go to wherever he's headed next. It's about time I said bye-bye to this crud. Izuku heads for the black car waiting for him on the side of the street. His luggage goes in the trunk as he gives his house one last look, a for sale sign tainting its appearance. Bakugo, living in the same neighborhood, walks along the same sidewalk. Izuku turns to look at him, sun shining down between the two. Their eyes meet despite how bright a glare each beam gives off. Who is it? Who is whispering in my head? Kyoka loses herself to the song as she vocalizes the words that she wrote. The greedy voices keep singing, begging for more. The two boys don't say anything to one another. There's nothing to be said. Izuku nods. Bakugo nods. It's the same path that they currently occupy, but they're going in separate directions. Izuku turns to go first, ducking into the vehicle waiting for him. It's not until the car door shuts behind him that the other boy walks away. I just want to be satisfied. Kyoka wraps her arms around herself in a self-imposed embrace, doing the bare minimum. I want to grab that heart of yours with my bare hands. She imagines Izuku's familiar sound, hearing it within the song. The throbbing, the pulsation, it surges forth as Kyoka cries out passionately. Let's fill it up with happy, until we rest in peace. She wishes he could be here having fun with the class instead of wherever he's going by himself. That glimpse of hell isn't so bad. Izuku sits across from Makima, her personal part in his welcoming to the commission calling for her presence. Hawks is there too, beside him, but the hero's gaze is fixed out the window. It's going to be a long ride. One that only the HPSC director will enjoy. Makima smiles, pleased with herself and the turnout of everything transpired. Scatter it with love. Kyoka grips her microphone so that the sweat on her hands won't allow it to slip as she confesses, I love you. Even though he can't hear her, she sings anyways, please humiliate me. Rob me of my dignity and laugh my honey. Izuku feels his heart aching, hand placing itself over his chest. Makima's eyes stay on him as he holds Pokita's tail through his shirt. He can't look at the woman anymore. He closes his eyes, leaning his head back to rest it against the back of his seat. I think my screws are coming loose. Kyoka snaps her head up. She ignores the whip of her ear jacks against her cheeks, another opportunity lost. Water droplets dot the windshield of the vehicle as it cruises through the city. Night falling upon Japan, so does a thunderstorm. Black clouds blot out the sun as it lowers from view. Shadows shade the car, the darkest of them all coming from the commission's headquarters. Rainy days never stay. Hand over your umbrella. Kyoka swallows a bead of sweat as it rolls from the top of her lip into her mouth. A salty taste makes her words bitter as she sings the next verse. Give me all of it. I want it all. The more I crave, an empty void consumes me. She returns to the hook of the song, pouring her heart out. Kyoka continues to get carried away. She sings as though her voice will somehow find itself to Izuku so that he and only he will hear her. The girl is no longer aware of her class as an audience. With her eyes closed, she can't see their awestruck expressions. If not for Asui, they would have all swallowed a fly or two since they've had their mouths hanging open the entire time. I'm getting a kick out of it, Kyoka ends with a final flourish. She pants, having to catch her breath after the intense solo. She's sure that she's never sung like that before. It's funny. She can't help but laugh at the end of her song. Consider it a tagline. But when her eyes slowly peel up to reopen, she's abashed beyond belief. All of that bravo is gone in an instant, the girl dropping her mic with a startled shout when realizing that whole thing was witnessed by her entire class. Mortified, Kyoka hurries to snatch her backpack before dashing out the door. She can faintly hear some of her classmates calling after her, but she doesn't care. Tears prickle at the corners of her eyes as she runs outside, the rain blending with her cries. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.